There's an interesting hypothesis that's been thrown around in the literature a few times now that suggests human language did not first evolve as spoken, but rather as gestural. And there's a couple of pieces of evidence described on page 35 that support this general conclusion. The first point is that precise movements of our mouth are really quite unique across the animal kingdom and may not actually have arrived on the evolutionary scene until there was a selective pressure for those mouth movements. You can see some description of that on page 32, where we learn that the precise movements required of our lips and tongue and mouth are so complicated, so that require so much coordination that most animals can't do it. The reason why, then, a selective pressure may have existed would have been that language already existed in the form of gestures, but could have been improved upon if it switched to be in the form of a vocal modality. You can imagine an alternate evolutionary trajectory in which there would be no pressure, no selective pressure, to cause humans to have the ability to precisely manipulate their lips and tongue and mouth in different forms, because there was no reason, there was no benefit for it. The second reason why we think that language might have been gestural first and then switched to become to a vocal modality is that apes can use gestures in flexible ways. That when apes do try to communicate in novel ways with each other, they do it using gestures. And thirdly, that apes don't make alarm calls or even use any other kind of referential vocalizations. Because they're our evolutionarily closest siblings, it makes the most sense that that a common ancestor of humans and other apes would have shared this tendency to communicate gesturally, and that humans only later would have developed a new modality for that language. And you can think to yourself some of the reasons, some of the benefits why we may have wanted to switch from a visual gestural modality to an auditory modality. For instance, you can imagine how much easier it is to communicate with each other using words than gestures when you're trying to do something else at the same time, like when you're trying to work on a project, you're painting a fence, or you're working as in a construction crew. It's very difficult to communicate using your hands while your hands are otherwise occupied. Alternatively, there are some situations when you can imagine to yourself that it would be beneficial to have a gestural form of communication when you wanted to be absolutely silent, like say you're stalking some prey and you don't want to give away that you're there. In any case, it appears that the switch from gestural to vocal was of such great evolutionary importance that not only did we evolve the ability to manipulate our tongue and our mouth and our lips all together to be able to create verbal language, but also we took some hit in our safety, in our own personal safety. Whereas other animals, other great apes, can swallow and breathe at the same time, we cannot. We lost that ability when our mouth changed to enable us the capacity for vocal communication. So it must have been a great evolutionary pressure to demand that we'd be willing to make such a sacrifice to our own personal safety in order to get the payoff of verbal language.